Alright, now we're going to work on chapter 8.8. This is the last one, and this is solving inequalities, okay? Remember, inequalities are sentences or mathematical sentences that instead of having an equal sign like an equation, they have these greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to. So that'd be less than, greater than, comma, comma, greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to. That's not very good. Okay, so these are inequalities. So the good news is you already know how to do these. The only difference is instead of an equal sign, you're going to have one of these, okay? Otherwise, we're still going to use the inverse operation. So the inverse operation of, say, x plus 4 greater than 10. So again, we need to get the x by itself like we do with solving an equation. But in this case, we're going to do the inverse operation, and we're just going to have a greater than symbol. So let's get rid of my little arrow so we can solve this. So we're going to do the inverse operation on both sides, so you can draw your line through it. Same thing. And we're going to be left with nothing here except for the x greater than 10 minus 4, or 6, okay? So that's an example of solving an inequality. Like I said, it's the exact same thing. You can even draw the line through it. Just note that right here, instead of the equal sign, we're going to have a greater than sign, and then we're going to graph it. Okay, so those are the only two differences. There's going to be a different thing here, and then at the end, we're going to do our little number line graph. Okay, so we're going to do these, don't worry. These properties that they want us to learn are just the addition property of inequality. Basically just says that that if you add the same thing to both sides, you get the same thing. Then it maintains the same inequality. If you, or it remains true. So if you subtract, so these are just fancy terms that basically say if you do the same thing to both sides, it's fine. Okay? And in fact, let's go ahead and skip forward because I'm going to go quickly on this page, on this particular part. Multiplication and division properties of inequalities just basically say if you divide by the same thing on both sides, it stays true. If you multiply by the same thing on both sides, it stays true. Okay, so all these properties are is fancy ways of saying if you do unto one side of the equation what you do unto the other side, it remains true. All right, so let's go to our examples. All right, so we have. This is similar to what you'll be doing in your big ideas. So solve this inequality, and remember that's why it's an inequality and not an equation. And then graph. Okay, so let's do this. So rewrite the problem: x minus 3 greater than 1. Okay, I'm going to draw lines for those of you who like the lines. Okay, so now I need to get x by itself because I want to know the values of x that make this true. So, what values of x? So how do I get x by itself? Well, I need to get rid of this 3, right? Because on this side, I don't just have x, I have x minus 3. So in order to get rid of a 3, or minus 3, the inverse operation of minus 3 is plus 3. Some of you are like, hurry up, I get this, and I'm very happy if that's what you're thinking. Okay, so that leaves me with x on this side greater than 1 plus 3 is 4. Okay, now all I have to do is graph it. And on your big ideas, it's going to already have a number line, and it's already going to have, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, or something like that. And all you're going to do is now you have to look here. And the only question is, we know it's 4, so we know it's going to start here. Okay, now I need to know, is it an open circle or closed? So open circle or closed, question mark. And I need to know, does it go right or left? Okay, so we have right here we have x is greater than, so does it go right or left? it goes right, greater than. Numbers to the right are greater than numbers to the left, right? 4 is greater than 3. 3 is greater than 2. 2 is greater than 1. So as you go right, it gets bigger. You knew that, hopefully. If not, then glad we reviewed that. Okay. And now open or close circle. Well, I don't have the little line there, right? So since I don't have the equal then sign, then I am going to have an open circle. So open circle going to the right. In big ideas, it's going to look something like, it's going to have a bunch of these little bars, right? And in this case, we would have picked this bar because that's open circle facing right. And then they would have had one that went like this too. Okay, and these would be the closed. This is what the closed circles. They even have like this one for complex things that you aren't even learning yet. But just know that this one is closed circle going right. This is open circle going right. Open circle going left. Open circle going right. Or wait. Sorry. The one missing here is closed circle going left. Okay? Alright, we'll speed up now. Okay, so this one here, same thing. I'm not going to work it out, but in order to solve this one, we are going to subtract 6 from both sides, okay? Therefore, we would end up with h is less than or equal. Here, let's do it, actually. So we end up with, let's go and do this. 15 is, ooh. Now remember, this one's going backwards. That's why I've decided to do this one. So the h is on the right side, okay? So this is, like the last video, this is where you have to be kind of careful. So we're going to subtract 6 from both sides. 6 minus 6 leaves me with 0. And now I have an h, and then 15 minus 6, which is 9. And now, again, you have to start by looking at your variable. So this is saying 9 is greater than or equal to h, right? But what I need to know is what are the values of h that make this true. H is true when it is less than or equal to 9. So you always start at your variable, then look at the sign that's facing it, and the small side is facing it, and it has the equal sign. So when we graph this one, we're going to have our, I like to put our 0 and then our 9. And then, so we're looking at 9, and 9 is filled in because of the equal to, and then this is the small end, so it's less than. Okay, less thans go left. All right. So now we've already looked at that page. Okay, so now this is no different. Multiplication and division is what we're going to do. Just remember that multiplication and division are opposite operations. So rewrite this. X divided by 5 is less than 2. What's the opposite of divided by 5? Multiplied by 5. Okay, for those of you who like the line, there you go. Okay, and now these 5s become 1s, leaving me with x, and then we have our less than symbol. That didn't change. And then 2 times 5 is 10. So now we're going to graph it. So here's my 0, here's my 10, and so we're looking at 10. Here's the variable. And it's the small end. Variables over here, small end. So less than 10. And there's no or equal to. So it is a closed circle going left. Okay? Or that would have looked like this little thing in your selection bar. You would just pick this up. You would just pick this thing up and carry it over to here, and it will automatically fill. Alright, now we have 4 times n greater than or equal to 32. 32. Okay, now we're going to divide both sides because 4 times n, the opposite operation, is divided by 4. These get canceled. N is greater than or equal to 8. So now we have our 0, we have our 8, and we're going to look again, we're going to look at n. Here's our n, and it's greater than, and here's our equal sign, so it's closed circle and it's going right. So closed circle going right. All right. Now, this is the hardest one, but hopefully you guys remember this from equations of how to use the reciprocal. Remember the reciprocal. So, they wrote this in kind of the tricky way, which I'm glad they did, so we didn't have to do multiples, okay? Multiple ones of these. Okay, so the first thing I want you guys to do is recognize that this right here is the same thing as 2/3 x. Okay? The x is on top. It's the same thing as 2/3 times x. So go ahead and rewrite it when you see something like this, okay? Where it's kind of combined, 2x's on top. Just go ahead and separate out the fraction, which is 2/3 times x, okay? That makes it easier. Now we're going to look at this and we're going to use the reciprocal to undo this left side and get the x by itself. So if I multiply it by 3/2, remember that these all cancel out. So I multiply this side times 3/2. I'm left with x is less than or equal to, and then 4/1 times 3/2. And we know we can cancel these, or factor out of 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 4 divided by 2 is 2. And we end up with 6/1 or 6. And then we go to graph it. We have 0. We have our 6. And we have x is less than, and here's our equal, so close circle, less than, going left, less than 6, okay? And again, that would look like this little thing on this little choice on your big ideas deal.